Well, guys, we did it. 100,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Wanted to start this video by saying thank you, and this is such a genuine thank you. I do not take any of this for granted. If you've been watching from the beginning, if you're a longtime subscriber, if you're a new subscriber, even if you're a guppy, I wanted to say thank you because you have obviously changed my life and you've changed the channel's trajectory with all of your interaction in this community that we're building. So thank you, seriously, from the bottom of my heart. 100,000 subscribers. I'm not getting content. I'm not getting complacent. We aren't on the channel either. We're going to keep trying to grind and keep trying to grow. But sometimes you got to stop and smell the roses, right? And 100,000 subscribers, that smells pretty damn good. To celebrate, we'll go ahead and do a promo over on Fade Me, guys. If you don't know what Fade Me is, it's the merch that we have here on the channel. Code 100K, so 100K today will take 15% off your entire order. Code 100K, 100K, take 15%. Go pick up some merch to celebrate with us. This is great stuff, guys, and obviously a huge part of what we like to do here as well. So go ahead and check that out. But again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't take any of this for granted. I am so damn proud of that number. I'm proud of Tassos. I'm proud of Trey. I'm proud of where Guy Boston is as a whole right now. And I just got to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to you guys, because I'm just a dummy with a camera. That's how it started, right? The community that we've built and you guys watching and interacting each and every day are really the cog that keeps this thing going. So I wanted to say thank you before we jumped into this video. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, 100,000 subscribers. Thank you, guys. And of course, today we had 100,000 subscribers. This freaking guy shows up to the party. What's going on there? All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Monday, November 4th. We have a 15-game NBA slate to dive into in today's video, like we always do. I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games, so it's probably going to be a longer video. Each and every one of these games, I'm going to give you my lean on the side. I'll give you my lean on the total. We'll talk about any other plays, like player props, that we like within the game as well. But as always, guys, all of my final plays, if you do want to fade me, all of my final plays will be listed for free in the pinned comment, so make sure to keep an eye on that. In terms of yesterday, we have a nice little 2-and-1 night. I love that Brandon Ingram over 2.5 3-pointers made for plus 140 odds. It was just a quarter unit play. And then the Pelicans first half. I'm glad we rolled the first half. It was a little sweaty, but that cashes as well. We were one Klay Thompson 3 away from the 3-0 sweep, but I really can't even be all that upset. I know this is a basketball show, but holy crap, our NFL week is off to a scorching hot start here. And you know what? I think it's worth bringing out our little friend, the money gun. Let's go! 3-0 Thursday night, 5-0 on Sunday in the NFL. Again, this is an NBA show, I get it, but let me celebrate these damn green check marks. Let's go. We need to pump in some crowd noise there because we also had our ride of the day cash here as well. Let's go. JD with the ride of the day. Tim Hardaway Jr. under 4.5 rebounds plus assists cashed as well. If you guys don't know what the ride of the day is, it is simple. Just use that hashtag ride of the day or ROTD in the comments. I jump on board with one person's play each and every day, giving you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. If you win, we continue to ride with your plays. So looking forward to seeing what JD throws our way today. If you lose, we do have to talk about it. You face the womp womp, but that ain't the case today. But go ahead and get those hashtag ride of the days in the comments. Let's buckle up for a long NBA breakdown video here today. Very, very excited. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We got a lot to be happy about today. Like you saw in the beginning of the video, we had 100,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so damn much. Let's jump into these games. Starting it off with the Cavs taking on the Bucks. Right now, Cavs laying 7 or 7.5, depending on where you get it. Total's at 230 right now. These two teams just played. Cleveland won in a 114-113 fashion in Milwaukee. Now we wait a couple days and we're playing in Cleveland, the exact same matchup. Cleveland's 7-0 on the season and 7-0 against the spread. At some point, I do think the wheels fall off a little bit. Like I've said multiple times, I think it's a very good team and I really like this team, but at some point they will drop a game. Giannis is listed as questionable. I think if Giannis plays today, this might be the gotcha game for Cleveland. They just beat this team. Now they're at home, laying a big number. So I'm going to lean towards Milwaukee if Giannis plays. I think 7 is just a little bit too much to be giving, but I could see why someone would be on the Cleveland side. They've been really good this season. Very, very impressive. So, hell, you know, if you're on the Cavs, don't let me talk you off of it. But I like Milwaukee plus the points today. I do think Milwaukee could kind of turn things for the better. They're 1-5 this year, and catch Cleveland maybe being a little bit too high on themselves. But I see why someone likes Cleveland. I like Cleveland long-term this season. In terms of the total, looking at 230, the one thing thing that I would assume is that Milwaukee tries to get to the hoop. It's kind of been their bread and butter so far this season, the only place that I feel like they've had much success scoring, which they shouldn't, like, I guess only emphasize that because Cleveland does struggle to some degree from the perimeter compared to that hoop. They've been good against the hoop this year, but if Milwaukee goes in with a game plan of getting to the hoop and Cleveland continues to play like they've been playing, which is great defensively, this is probably a low-ish scoring game. Even the game that we just saw was 114 to 113, right? And this total is now way up there at 230. So I'm going to lean towards the under, but I think I like the Bucks plus the points more than anything else in this game. In terms of a player prop look, I don't have much that I'm liking. Like I mentioned, I wouldn't think about Giannis play. One, he's banged up, and two, kind of scared of how Cleveland defends the paint so far this season. They've been very, very good overall. I mean, they've been good defensively, right? But I don't love the idea of taking it into Jared Allen. So I would probably look at maybe some perimeter play from Milwaukee, but not loving the player props in this spot. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Next up, we got Washington taking on Golden State. Looks like Steph Curry is a game-time decision, so keep an eye on that. That probably makes a lot of sense why this line is at plus 10. Total at 231.5 here. I don't think this Washington team is any good. They've looked okay. I mean, they got beat by the Heat, but prior to that, they won 2 against Atlanta, so they're 2-3 on the year. But Golden State, even without Steph, beat New Orleans twice. They beat Houston last game. Like, this team has looked good, and I don't necessarily think that I'm afraid of rolling with them minus the 10 points here. If Steph plays, I think this Washington team is crap. Now, if you've been watching for a while, or if you're new, I don't really love laying double-digit spreads in the NBA just because, like, backdoor covers and whatnot. So this is probably something that I keep as a lean. I don't necessarily know if I get there as a final play. Maybe like a Warriors first half or something like that if we can cut this number in half. So that's a consideration. Or just a Warriors team total over, because this Washington defense is like hot butter. You know what I mean? We should be able to see some Warriors. They're allowing the second most points per game so far this season. They're the 6th worst team in terms of defensive efficiency, but you look at the Warriors and it's like, well, they're actually pretty damn freaking good this season defensively. So maybe we just say, hey, screw it. The Golden State Warriors can go out there and stop Washington. Maybe they cover the 10 points with their defense and whatnot, but I still think that they could score in this Washington team, and we lean towards that team total over. I'd probably rather that, actually, now that I speak it out loud too. I'd rather that than the total at 231.5, because I already mentioned Golden State's a very good defensive team. Why are we going to ask Washington to contribute to that 231.5, right? So Golden State minus points or Golden State team total over is what I'm most likely looking at in this game today. No real player props. I'd consider Jonathan Kuminga because Washington is so damn bad at the rim, but that's as far as I'd go. Next up, we have Detroit taking on the Lakers. Right now, Detroit getting 7.5 points at home. That total sitting at 226. Detroit 2-5 on the season. The Lakers 4-2 overall and 4-2 against the spread. On the road, that they're 1-2. I do think that that's worth noting, but Detroit is here coming on off of a back-to-back after a win. I don't necessarily see them being as a team that wins 2 in a row, so I do lay the points as the Lakers. I will say I think that this total is a little bit too low, too. I think that the Lakers play fast enough, and the Detroit defense isn't all that tremendous. Now, you look at some of the numbers, 11th fewest points per game so far allowed this season, but they're also the 2nd slowest team. From a defensive efficiency perspective, they're more middle of the pack / bottom of the pack, and at home, they're actually the 2nd worst so far this year in terms of defensive efficiency. So I could see some easy buckets, honestly, on both sides so far throughout this game, based on so far what we've seen in this season. So yeah, give me the over 226, Lakers minus the 7.5 points. And then from a player prop perspective, this Lakers team does struggle against the mid-range. That's going to be a good look for Cade Cunningham. He leads the team in mid-range field attempts per game, as well as Tobias Harris. He's 2nd there. So maybe we look at Cade Cunningham for points, or even though it's not mid-range, I wouldn't mind Cade Cunningham getting into a rhythm and then making over 1.5 3-pointers made, a stat in which he's only hit the under on once so far this season, and it was last game against Brooklyn. He only shot 4 times from deep. So maybe I like Cade because of, I think he'll get into a rhythm due to the mid-range weakness of LA. He might start chucking up some more threes, and maybe we see kind of like what we saw a week ago, that 7 or 8 attempts, which I'd like him to make 2 there. But I also like Tobias Harris. We know him as a mid-range guy. Last time he played against the Lakers, he had 16 points. Now, that was when he was in Philly. But so far this season, he's been kind of up and down to this line. But 2 of his last 3 games, he scored 18 points. So over 14.5 points from him, not something that I'm going to shy away from necessarily either. So keep an eye on the pinned comment. Definitely a few potential plays that could come from this game. I know the Pistons are involved, but hey, we got the Lakers team here. They have been running fast, so I think an over could be in play as well, like I mentioned. Next up, we have Atlanta taking on the Celtics. This is obviously a tough matchup for the Hawks here. They're 10-point dogs at home going up against the Celtics team that is 6-1. 4-3 against the spread, though, but the Hawks... I much like last year, I could be mistaken here, but they were really bad against the spread at one point last year too, right? They're 3-4 this year, 1-6 against the spread, and they've hit 7 overs, so they're not playing much defense here. I think that's going to be tough to get to an Atlanta side of things, even with that 10-point spread. But what I will say is this 10 points makes a lot more sense than like the Warriors' 10 points against the Wizards. To me, like the Celtics are much better. Now, Jaylen Brown is listed as out. That's obviously going to be a massive deal, but I still think the Celtics should be able to rely on their other guys. It's the part of why they're so good. Even when a guy like Jaylen Brown, an all-star, is out, it's like, or finals MVP, right, is out, it's like, well, Jason Tatum, Derek White, Drew Holiday, like they're still pretty damn good. Peyton Pritchard has emerged, so I think the Celtics roll in this spot. I don't like laying double digits, but this might be one where the hometown boys do pull it home for us. Keep an eye on the pinned comment, like I say a million times in the video. But Celtics minus the points. This total's at 234. Yes, I think the Celtics score a lot of points in this one, but I think defensively they should be decent enough. This is an Atlanta team that loves shooting at the rim. So far this year, 8th in terms of frequency, so the 8th most shots in the restricted area. The Celtics aren't all that bad down there in the paint. They haven't been, I guess, tremendous. They've been way more of a perimeter team, both offensively and defensively, but still a decent defense, and I don't think Atlanta's going to score too efficiently, so I'm going to lean towards the under. This might be the first under that Atlanta hits this season, but yeah, I'm hoping that, Tatum, Cornette, Al Horford, these guys can kind of be stiffs down there, not make it too easy for Jalen Johnson or Trae Young to get to the rim, and we kind of force Atlanta to play perimeter game, which suits the Celtics defensive play style, right? So yes, is it their strength that they're, in the paint defense? Not necessarily, but if we can get Atlanta to play perimeter basketball, which we know they will, right? With Trae Young out there, I think the Celtics can roll and keep them to a low number, and this under hits at 234. Player props wise, I've really tried to dig in absence of Jaylen Brown and try to find something, and nothing much came up. I still like Derek White to kind of exceed what he's been doing, but his points in assist line is all the way up at 25.5. We got that a couple days ago at 19.5, then at 20.5. You know what I mean? So things a little bit too inflated for me to roll with any player props, I think, in this spot. By the way, guys, if you think we're flying through this, we probably are, because we got 15 games to dive into. So yes, we may be going a tad quicker than we normally do. Hopefully, you guys understand that with the number of games on today. Sometimes we got to try and move things along and not ramble like we normally do. But at some point we probably will end up rambling like we normally do, kind of like I'm doing now. But just wanted to flag. I'm aware if you guys think I'm moving a mile a minute, kind of have to with this many games. All right, Nets 5.5-point dogs at home, total sitting at 225. They are coming off of, we already kind of mentioned it, that loss to Detroit yesterday, so they're on back-to-back here. They lose 106-92 in this one. This Memphis team has a ton of injuries to note, though. Bane's still out, Marcus Smart out. We have Spencer Williams, Kennard Jackson, Gigi Jackson. Conchar looks like a game-time decision, but the rest of the guys still out as well. But this Memphis team looks good even in some of these injuries. Now, I don't love the idea that this Brooklyn team has looked like, even before that Pistons game, right? Or I guess I should say before that Pistons game, they looked good, and we already have this matchup so far this year. It was in Memphis, and Brooklyn won 119-106, so I don't love the idea that they've looked good against them, but part of me also loves the idea of the team I consider better, Memphis, which 5.5-point favorites, that makes sense, right? Kind of love the idea of them already early on in the year having a revenge spot. So I like Memphis here, minus the 5.5 points. I do think that I would peg this more around the -3 spot, some of where, Memphis likes to shoot from in the paint. Brooklyn has been decent at stopping that so far this year, kind of a little bit above average and only allowing a 66%, hit rate, field goal percentage down there. So I guess there is a little bit of issue there where it's like, well, where Memphis likes to score, maybe that's why the Nets beat them the first time around. So that gives me a little hesitancy, but even still, I'm going to lean towards Memphis here, minus the 5.5. Total at 225, like I mentioned, when they previously played 119-106, so I think they have this number pegged pretty damn well. That was with Brooklyn shooting was like 50-something% from the field, but Memphis struggled from deep, so I do think that we can stick right around this number, and I think there could be some foul trouble on both ends, so I'm going to lean towards the over, but Memphis minus the 5.5 points, I definitely like a lot more. From a player prop perspective, nothing really jumping out at me in this game, so really looked for it because I think there are some good, young, fast-paced guys that we might take some overs, but to me, nothing just up jumping out, so I don't think that with a 15-game slate, we're in a position where we need to force a Brooklyn or Memphis player prop today. All right, real quick, guys, before we do jump into the rest of the games, I want to talk to you about Underdog. Go ahead and check it out. You're going to get a .5 Patrick Mahomes square for Monday Night Football tonight. You're also going to get up to $1,000 in a deposit bonus when signing up. If you don't know what Underdog is, you have all of the players out there. You pick higher or lower based on their set projections. You add them to an entry. The more you win, the more you get paid out. You can win up to 1,000 times your money over on Underdog. So use that link in the pinned comment. It's also in the description. Get this Mahomes free square as well as up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Link in the pinned comment as well as the description. Let's jump back into these games. All right, Miami taking on the Kings. I like Sacramento in this spot. I've been pretty big on Sacramento this year. Have they really proven me right? No, they're 3-3, 2-3-1 against the spread. On the road, 2-2. But this Miami team I've also been pretty damn low on, and I think that that's been fairly proven right. Like, they haven't played the hardest of schedules. Their wins are against Charlotte, Detroit, and Washington this season, right? Like, I don't think this Miami team, even though they're at home, deserves to be the favorite in this game. So I'm going to lean towards Sacramento plus the 2 points. The total sitting at 226.5 is definitely an intriguing number here. You have Sacramento that's playing at a top 10 pace so far to start the year. You have Miami that's playing at a bottom 5 pace to start the year. They are at home. I think Sacramento's defense is also good as well. So even though they play fast, I think that they're going to give Miami trouble in the scoring end. So I'm going to lean towards the under in this spot. But I think my favorite play is going to be Sacramento plus the points or Sacramento on the money line. Now, one starter, and it is the guy that I like a player prop lean for today. Kevin Huerter is listed as a game time decision. If he plays, I like Sacramento even more, and I also like Huerter over in his points, as well as my favorite play is over 1.5 3-pointers made. This Miami team is a good defensive team, and they struggle against the right corner three. As specific as I'm being, I get it, but that is the spot that Kevin Huerter by far and away leads the team in field goal attempts per game from the right corner. I think he's second in terms of corner threes, so Keegan Murray shoots a lot more from the other corner, but Miami, weirdly enough, is better at that left corner three than right corner three defense. So Huerter to have a couple of those pops, and obviously throughout the game, we're not betting corner threes here. It's just kind of the inspiration for this play. I like Kevin Huerter to make 2 threes today, so definitely something that we're considering as well. Keep an eye on the pinned comment, like I always say. All right, if it wasn't for injuries, this could be an interesting spot here, but Utah is still banged up, and I do think Chicago is the better team. Now, they have some questionabilities in terms of injuries here, too. Zach LaVine as well as Williams listed on the injury report, so I guess that's worth, obviously, keeping an eye on here. But Lauri Markkanen game time decision, and Jordan Clarkson ruled out. If Lauri Markkanen plays, I honestly don't know if I hate Jazz plus the points, though he has to play. Jordan Clarkson being out, as much as he is like a hoopster and a ball hog and whatnot, still obviously a major factor for them off the bench. So there are some injuries that kind of kick the Jazz in the you-know-whats here. But to me, I do think that the Jazz do have some spots that they could look, I guess, okay overall. I think that they probably are the better in the paint team. They like to shoot from in the paint. Now, when I say in the paint, I guess I should talk more or less kind of at the rim. In the paint, obviously, can be the foul line and that area outside the restricted area. But I think Utah could have some, advantages over there if Lauri Markkanen were to play, but I don't know if he is now. Chicago offensively loves shooting above the break, second highest frequency in the league this year. Utah has been kind of bad against points from three allowed. So again, there's spots that I like Utah, but then you look at the Bulls and it's like, well, if Zach LaVine and Patrick Williams play, they are probably the clear-cut better team, which is why we're sitting at -7.5, right? So I think I'll leave my lean in the hands of the injuries. If Markkanen plays, I don't mind the Jazz plus the 7.5 points. Same thing if Zach LaVine doesn't play. If neither one of them play, I don't mind the plus 7.5. If LaVine plays and Markkanen doesn't, I look at the Bulls -7.5 instead of the plus 7.5 on the other side. So kind of a tough one. It stinks when NBA injuries impact it, but you know how the NBA gets. If you haven't bet NBA for long, just buckle up, because these injuries, who's in, who's out, is like the grueling part of betting on the NBA. In terms of a total 228, you have the fastest paced team in the league so far, Chicago, going up against Utah, who's the 7th fastest paced team. Like I did say, there are some spots where Chicago can perform offensively. Same thing with Utah. So I'm going to lean towards the over 228. You can get at 228. I've seen obviously in the graphic here 228.5, but 228s are out there as well. And then from a player prop perspective, nothing much here, just due to the fact that we have a bunch of injuries that would impact any of the lines that we're looking at. And even without injuries, I don't know if I'd be like glaring into this game for player props. All right, Houston taking on the Knicks. This is not an easy one, and this spread's all over the place. I've seen 2.5 this morning. I've seen 3.5 like we have here. That total's at 219. I've seen 217s and a half. So this thing is definitely moving around. In terms of where we'd look for injuries here, same thing for Houston, but now Steven Adams is upgraded to game time decision, but same injuries for the Knicks. Cameron Payne actually game time decision, but Achua and Mitch Robinson both listed as out. So there's where we stand for an injury report spot. In terms of how the Knicks have been playing, I'm not exactly sure what to make of them. I feel like they're losing to good teams, but beating the bad ones. They beat Miami, then they spanked Detroit, right? So I do give them a little bit of credit here that maybe they're turning the corner. And both of those games were on the road. I'd hate to think that they're potentially, looking forward to getting home in a few days, but they have a game in a couple days still in Atlanta. So they're in the middle of a road trip. Hopefully they're not thinking that, because I like the Knicks today. If we can get them at 2.5, I like that, minus the 2.5 points. Better offense. Both teams are good defenses, but the Knicks are starting to kind of put it together and slow teams down and whatnot. I would say Houston's the more efficient defense, but the Knicks have been controlling the pace of games plenty so far this year, and I think that has something to do with some defensive edges too, you know what I mean? Like, we're not just high-flying or run and gunning, like, they're playing Knicks basketball, which is what you want to see if you are betting on them. So I'll take the Knicks here, minus the 2.5 points. I believe that they should probably win the offensive paint war as well as the offensive perimeter war. Houston's been good defensively on the perimeter, but I think the Knicks can outshoot them for sure. So yeah, multiple reasons why I like the Knicks today, and it's not like Houston plays fast and that could throw the Knicks off their pace. Houston's the third slowest team in terms of pace to start the year. The Knicks 30th, first in terms of slowest. So both these teams want to play slow. I think that just fits right into what the Knicks have been doing, and they've won a couple games straight. Now, obviously Houston, I can't really dismiss what they've been doing. They've won 2 of their last 3 games, that big win against Dallas, but then they lose to Golden State in a game in which I thought that they maybe had a better fighting chance. To me, I think they're like, 6-point favorites in that one, too. So, to me, they're not riding as high as the Knicks. So, another reason why. Knicks minus the 2.5, or even if it's 3.5, I still like it. Now, that total at 219, I like that under. The minute we start talking 217.5, 218, yes, it's only a difference of a bucket or two, but I start to like it less and less as it gets lower and lower into that, near 216 range. So, 219.5, if we get it there, I don't mind the under based on the pace and kind of play of these two teams. But the minute it starts dropping lower and lower, I'm not loving it all that much. From a player prop perspective, now, the angle, I'll tell you the bad news on this one before we get to the good news. The Knicks have been decent at stopping center so far, and I like Alfred Sengun here over 17.5 points. They've been really bad at preventing points from the rim, which is Sengun, most of his shots come from the rim. Center specifically, they have actually defended fairly well. So it's kind of a two-parter there. The bad news is that if you look at points versus centers, they're 5th best in the entire league. The good news for it is that, their field goal percentage at the restricted area is like 77%, and that's where Sengun likes to do his damage. So I like him over 17.5 points. That's got a chance of being a final play, especially if you can get to the line a little bit against this Knicks team. All right, we got Minnesota taking on Charlotte. Minnesota 9.5-point favorites. That total at 226.5. This is an interesting one. I don't know if I'd love the 9.5 number for Minnesota here to lay it if they hadn't just lost to San Antonio outright as favorites. That was a couple days ago. That gives me a little bit of hope that this Minnesota team's going to get fired up and kind of fire back, especially with a team in which they're probably punching down. Now, Gobert's listed as a game time decision. That's obviously huge. And then the Charlotte side of things, Brendan Miller and Seth Curry are listed as game time decisions. No Mark Williams still, and now no Nick Richards. So huge blows to obviously their front court. I'm going to lean towards Minnesota minus the 9. They should be pissed after a loss to San Antonio. Even if Gobert doesn't play, there's way more injury to the big man position on the Charlotte side of things, so I don't mind it. Now, one spot, we'll get to the total in a second, but my favorite look in this game, and it's been a guy that's let down plenty of people so far this year because, we're high on him and he hasn't really been all that great, but I like Dante DiVincenzo, both his over 11.5 points as well as his over 2.5 3-pointers made. Now, we're getting nitpicky in terms of zone shooting and whatnot, but he takes more corner threes than anyone else on this team. For Minnesota, Anthony Edwards is right there behind him, but this Charlotte team has struggled against the corner three, and Minnesota just takes a lot of corner threes in general. Another reason why I like that minus 9.5. That's the most frequent spot that they shoot from, 5th most in the entire league in terms of ranking, but Charlotte from the right corner, 45.5%, and then from the left corner, 42% from deep. So yeah, I like the spot here. They actually cover that perimeter above the break fairly well, which is kind of crazy to think about. But once you get to those corners, I think Dante DiVincenzo and the Timberwolves as a whole could do some damage. And like I said, they shoot the 5th most corner threes in the entire league so far this year. So Yeah, give me Minnesota minus the 9.5, as well as DiVincenzo, both on his points and three-pointers made. In terms of a total here, I don't really see any reason why Minnesota shouldn't run this one up. So instead of a full game, I might just lean towards Minnesota team total over, but I could get behind both of them here. Now, Minnesota has been playing fairly slow, and Charlotte has for 2 years, but we've seen Minnesota get up to that 117 or that 115, 119. Even in a bad game against San Antonio, they did get up to 103, which seems like an absolute basement rock bottom floor, right? So I'm going to lean towards the over in this spot. When they play bad, they still get to that 105-ish number. So if we can get them on a good night against a bad defense like Charlotte, I think that we could see them, hit their team total overs. That's going to be a spot that we look at as well. OKC taking on Orlando. I don't know if we're going to spend too much time on this one. Obviously, Orlando has the injuries that they're dealing with. Now, Wendell Carter Jr. also listed as a game-time decision. There are some injuries on OKC side, but most of their starting lineup is healthy. They're 12.5-point favorites here, and their defense is so damn good. I don't really know where Orlando's points would come from, so I'll lean OKC minus the 12.5. I don't think I bet it myself just because it's such a big number, and I'll also lean towards the under, but I might look at a team total under for the Magic, just focusing on OKC going out there and doing their job in a sense. So yeah, OKC minus the points. I like the under as well as a team total under. In terms of what I'd look for from a player prop perspective, it's tough. I feel like we're splitting hairs, especially due to the fact that, Banchero, like we don't necessarily know exactly who's filling in for Banchero and that type of thing, but I would lean towards an under on Franz Wagner. His shot profile does not really fit this Thunder team all that well. So if he, has a lot of opportunities and kind of gets into an opposite of a rhythm, right? He gets into a funk. I really don't see him having the best of days, but at the same time, who else is going to score? I know they have a few other guys, Suggs and whatnot, but Wagner should be the guy stepping up. And would it surprise me if he goes for 20? Not necessarily, but I'll lean towards his under 19.5 because as he gets into the paint, gets closer to the rim, the Thunder have been phenomenal this season at stopping that. And I don't necessarily see him getting out there and saying, okay, well, I'm going to huck it from 3 or anything like that. So yeah, the closer he gets to the rim, I think the more he's going to shoot, and that does not fit this Thunder team very well if he wants to score. So Franz Wagner under, probably something that I consider as well. But again, it's an interesting one. I mean, I guess an under helps because there could be a blowout if the Thunder blow them out, and if the Magic have a team total under, that all correlates. But that line is a little bit interesting to me. If this is a blowout, I don't know if I even want to consider it because wonky stuff happens in the NBA when teams get blown out. All right, New Orleans taking on Portland. Portland, obviously not the greatest of teams, but I think we're starting to see some major flaws, whether it's injury or just Ingram and Zion meshing, some major flaws in this Pelicans team. So I can see why this spread is at 2.5. You might be looking at it being like, what the heck? They should be better than the Blazers. They're on a back-to-back. They lost to Atlanta yesterday. Shout out to our cashing of the first half because I ended up losing the game by 15, but they did win the first half, which is great. But I could see why this spread is at 2.5. You know what I mean? Back to back, they lost yesterday. They're super, super injured. Now Zion's listed as a game time decision. So yeah, 2.5 doesn't seem like it's all that much, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Now, is it enough to sit here and say, hey, I think that this is going to be a spot where Portland gets them? I don't think so. If Zion plays, I do still like the Pelicans, even though they're on a back-to-back. Portland's shooting more than any other team in the restricted area this year, and honestly, the Pelicans do struggle at preventing points in the paint, so there's your angle if you like Portland. But overall, everywhere else on the floor, Pelicans should dominate the perimeter. They should dominate the mid-range. I do still think that they're probably the better defensive team when it comes to, efficiencies and whatnot, but this Pelicans team has struggled, so I get it. If you want to go with Portland and you say, hey, they're going to dominate the paint, then you be my guest. I just don't necessarily see it happening like that. As bad as the Pelicans are, I think the Trailblazers are a little bit worse there. In terms of injuries on their side, nothing major to note here, which is good. Sharp and Thibault still out there. Robert Williams Jr. is listed as a game-time decision, so obviously that's nice to note, but other than that, nothing major to note. But I guess I'll lean Pelicans minus the 2.5. I don't know if it's crazy. I don't know if it's dumb. I don't think that I make it my final play because I don't really like this Pelicans team. I mean, we bet them yesterday, but how greedy can we get, right? I still think that they are struggling severely. In terms of the total, 223.5, I'll also lean towards the under here. Portland at the fastest play kind of like a mid-pace team, right? And they like to take a lot of two-point shots. If we're counting by twos, which I think we will, McCollum, Murray, a lot of these guys on the Pelicans that shoot a bunch of threes, if we're counting by twos, 223.5, I don't think is going to be all that easy to get to, especially if these two teams are playing kind of slow. In terms of player props, nothing major I'd like here. You could look at, and the Pelicans do kind of struggle in terms of, I guess, mid-range, or excuse me, the Portland struggles in terms of mid-range, so maybe we'd look at Brandon Ingram or something like that, because he's going to shoot mid-range and from deep, right? But his numbers are a little bit inflated here, but he'll shoot from mid-range and deep. Those are two of the Blazers' big-time struggles. So his points line right now, let's see if we can pull it up quickly. His points line right now is going to be probably astronomical, 24.5. I don't love it. I mean, he's hit the over in 4 of 7 games so far this year, and obviously with McCollum and Murray out, he's looked a little bit better, but maybe this is another spot where we look at his over 2.5 threes like we had yesterday for plus 130. I think he's going to have a lot of volume, especially if Zion's out, so maybe we look at that there, but you could probably tell by my tone that I don't think this is the sexiest of matchups in a 15-game slate, but as I talk about that Ingram 3 prop, we liked it yesterday. I guess I don't mind today, especially if this could be a close game and not a blowout. All right, we got the Mavs taking on the Pacers. This could be a pretty good game here. The Pacers are starting to play a little bit. Now they're coming off a loss, but they're starting to play a little bit more Pacer basketball in which they do up the tempo. That was a big win against Boston, overtime 135, 132, was it? 133, whatever it was. Nice win for them. They haven't had the best of season, but again, I think they're starting to get back to playing better basketball. That being said, I don't think 5 points is enough to give them here with the Mavericks at home. Now, if your argument's going to be, well, Luka and Kyrie and Clay on a back-to-back is going to be the issue, I guess I can get that. I don't necessarily want to argue that. So if you like the Pacers for the back-to-back reason, especially when I just said, they're starting to run and run, I get it. But I still think that there's stuff off with this Pacers team that they have to work on. And the Mavericks only laying 5 points here at home in a matchup that I think that they fare fairly well against, I don't hate it. So this is going to be a spot in which both teams love the mid-range. Indiana hasn't really covered the mid-range well this year. Dallas has. Both of these teams do like scoring in the paint in the restricted area specifically. Dallas very good in the restricted area. In fact, points in the paint allowed 6th best this season. Indiana 24th. So obviously there's a little bit of an advantage there as well. So I do see a 5-point win at least here for the Mavericks. That total at 235. That is way up there, but who's to say, the Pacers don't up the tempo here? Because I do think Dallas might have some tired legs, and if the Pacers start to run, there might be a lot of points scored in this one. I just can't necessarily get to it. It's a little bit too high for me. If this was like 230, 229, I might be considering that over, because I could see, 116 or 118 to 114, something in that range, right? Though that's close to this, and that's, it's pretty much essentially the same thing, I don't think that I can pull the trigger on an over 235. So I by default lean towards the under, hoping that the Mavericks kind of control this game because I like them on the spread, but also if they're on a back-to-back, they might want to prevent that sort of up and down running. They might want to say, okay, let's slow things down. We do have ball-dominant guards like Kyrie and Luka. We can control this pace in the half court if we need to, so I'm thinking that's going to be the case. In terms of a player prop, I do have one that I like. It's going to be an under on the Indiana Pacers side of things. Looking at Pascal Siakam here, under 20.5 points. Now, there is an injury to note, Andrew Nembhard on the side of the Pacers. I don't think that's going to impact what I like here for Siakam, but I did just want to kind of throw that out there. Miles Turner should be playing this season. He's hit the under in 4 of 6 games. Against Dallas, he's hit the under in 2 straight games here. Last 2 games that he's played, 12 points and 13 points. Field goal attempts, he's only shot 11 in both of those. So far this year, he's averaging right around 14 attempts. But again, when he shoots that, 11 to 13, which maybe they just can match up with his shot profile well, I don't necessarily think he has the quantity or volume to get to that 21 number. So Siakam under 20.5 points is definitely something of consideration today. And guys, before we do move on, if you would go ahead and comment 33, you made it pretty much 33 minutes into the video. I get it. This is a long one. We're grinding it out, but we have a 15-game NBA slate. That is absolutely awesome. Make sure you guys go check out our Monday Night Football video as well. That is posted on the channel. But comment 33 if you made it this far in the video. Appreciate you guys. And again, we hit 100,000 subs. Come on now. Comment 33. Appreciate the hell out of you guys. Nuggets taking on the Raptors here. Nuggets at home. We did see this matchup earlier on in the year, and the Nuggets squeaked out their first win of the year against Toronto, 127 to 125. Plenty of times during that game, it looked like Toronto could pull that one out. Toronto's now coming off of a pretty good win a couple nights ago against Sacramento. So 10.5 points. It's 9.5 right here, but 10.5 is another line out there. I think maybe a little bit too much. I don't think that this Denver team has pull away potentials, at least based on what we've seen. You know what I mean? Even in games where they scored a lot of points, like against Brooklyn, that went to overtime, they won by 5. They lost to Minnesota. They did blow out Utah, but we've already talked about some of Utah's concerns, right? So 10.5 points, I might be a psycho, but give me the Raptors here plus the points. Total sitting at 228. I've seen this up at 230 this morning, so this thing is definitely moving around. I guess I would lean towards the over if Toronto's going to keep this game close. They play with a fast pace, and this honestly hasn't been the slowest of Denver teams that we've seen as of recent years. So maybe Denver moves it along a little bit as well because their defensive efficiency hasn't been all that great. Pretty offensively efficient so far this year, but again, that defensive efficiency is what would slow down, I believe, the pace in this spot, making it tough for Toronto to score. But if Toronto gets a bucket, Jokic goes down there, gets a bucket, I think that we could see, I don't know, 115 to 115 type of spot, which will be the over here, and then whoever wins, right? But in terms of a player prop, I don't really see a reason why Jokic shouldn't be able to have a good game. He should be able to kind of dominate in the paint here against this team. When he did play them earlier in the year, he ended up with 40 points. Now, again, close game, overtime, all of that, but I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be able to kind of dominate in the paint again. So Jokic over in points. Is it high at 29.5? Yes, but so far this season, he's averaging 29.8. So obviously, he's still built for it. And though he's not having the season he's had in years past, nor the Nuggets, I still think Jokic can have a very good game here. Suns taking on the Sixers. Paul George is listed as a game time decision. I think that that's obviously worth noting for the Sixers side of things. Right now, Suns sitting at 7.5 point favorites. That total is at 227. I really don't see an angle for the Sixers here, but I don't know how Paul George is going to impact this team. Like, does he really elevate them that much? Potentially, I could see, Maxey and George playing really well with one another. So that does make it tough, but assuming that he's a little rusty or assuming maybe he doesn't even play, I still don't see any reason why the Suns shouldn't win this one. The Sixers have one win on the season. It came against Indiana. Okay, give you credit. We already talked about Indiana has some struggles. The Suns have now won 4 straight games. They're 5-1 on the year. They're at home in this game. They're 3-0 so far at home. In their home games, they haven't necessarily been crushing against the spread. Like, they're just a 2-4 team against the spread on the year. But the Sixers team just does not seem to have much going. Like, their offense is super inconsistent. I think they're yet to get to 120 so far this year, whereas if you look at Phoenix, like, this is a team that is built to be able to score points. They're going to give you like a minimum minus 115, right? So yeah, this is all Phoenix for me. Total sitting at 227. I don't necessarily see where the Sixers stop Phoenix. So maybe a Phoenix team total over. I wouldn't mind the full game at 227. My one concern, and I've said this a few times, is like, do we bank on both teams to contribute offensively? I'm not all that sure there because I don't think that the Sixers team is meshing yet. So maybe a Phoenix team total over at the very best if we look at this from a total perspective. And then from a player prop perspective, I don't mind, maybe some D-book action as well. I do like the idea of if Bradley Beal doesn't play, looks better and better, but he's going to be taking plenty of shots above the break, mid-range, at the hoop. He kind of scores from everywhere, which has kind of been the Sixers' problem defensively, you know what I mean? Bottom 10 team in the league in terms of scoring. They struggle at the rim, but they definitely struggle on the perimeter and kind of in the paint. So maybe a Devin Booker line, but his lines have been getting a little bit inflated as well. All right, we got the Clippers laying 4.5 against the Spurs here. Total sitting at 218. Seen some 218.5s out there as well. I like the Spurs in this spot getting that 4.5 points. They look like they're playing decent basketball. 2 wins in a row here. That big one against Minnesota, they were 4-point dogs in that one, and they end up winning outright by 10. So give them a little credit there, right? The Clippers, the one thing that kind of scares me here, now it kind of helps the argument, but it does kind of scare me, is that the Clippers are yet to get a home win this season. They're 0-4 at home. Their 2 wins have come on the road against Denver and Golden State. Decent wins, but overall, like, at some point you get your home win, right? And they're playing a team that isn't all that rock solid, so worries me a little bit. But what if the Clippers win by 3 points, right? Like, we still cash the Spurs plus the 4.5, so I do like that spot. I think that the Spurs should be able to control the perimeter game. We have not seen very good defense from the Clippers on the perimeter. Now, do the Spurs shoot all that much from 3? Not necessarily, but they'll either get to the basket or, I don't want to say settle, but elect for a jump shot. Whereas the Clippers really have just been getting into the paint this year in terms of where they've liked to shoot from and whatnot. And San Antonio's been very good in terms of points in the paint allowed. They're number 1 so far this year in the paint. So this is outside of the restricted area. So think about foul line to the restricted area. 34.8% field goal percentage allowed. I love that for the Spurs because obviously Wemby's long. They have been playing decent defense. You even throw in the idea with Sohan, Barnes, like they have a decent, little commune of defenders down there. So if that's the Clippers' forte, I think the Spurs can kind of limit that and make it tough on them. Give me the 4.5 points. In terms of player prop, I don't have by the way, I don't have a major feel for the over. This seems a little bit too low. I guess if I think the Spurs stay in this game, it's probably going to be a slow pace game in which the Clippers miss some shots. So I'll lean under. Don't love it though, but I do love a player prop. It's something that we cashed a couple days ago. Wow, I can't even speak. Ivica Zubac. Wow, that name just threw me through that was tough. Big Z, Zubac here. Under 16.5 points because I can't say Ivica. Okay, I think we got it. I can't even pronounce my own name. But Zubac, under 16.5 points. I like this spot. 3 straight games against San Antonio all last year in which he did not hit this. So far this year, he's actually looked pretty good to the line. Not the under, but pretty good overall. But against teams that do defend the rim really well, he has not been all that tremendous. So, yeah, I like this spot for him to go and probably score somewhere around 10, 12, something like that. Like against Portland, we talked about them. They're pretty good in the paint, right? He had, what was it? Let's see if we can pull that up. 6 points. Then against OKC, who's phenomenal at defending the paint, 9 points. So I think we're picking and choosing good spots for Zubac to not go out there and have a 17-point type of a game. He's already had 21, 22, 23, and 22 in the other 4 games. But again, very specific in terms of where we are picking him to struggle. So I like him and his under in points. And guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Hope you guys did enjoy. Again, one last thank you. At least in this video, one last thank you for the 100,000 subscribers. Hats off to you guys. I appreciate the hell out of it. Go pick up some merch over on Fade Me. Again, 100K, so 100K is going to be the promo code to get that discount. I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.